Hello everybody and welcome back. My name is Kari and today I'm doing the 15 best books of 2017. The number 15 has no particular significance, nor are these ranked. I just went through all the books I've read and came up with the 15 that I remembered most with fondness. So, here we go. The first one is The Diplomat's Wife by Pam Jenoff. This one follows a diplomat's wife. It's set in World War II in Europe. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I couldn't tell you a lot about it right now because I read it in January when I was in Nicaragua, actually. So I do apologize about that, but I will leave it linked down below if you want to check it out. Number 2 is The Book Jumper by Mechthild Glaser. This is a translated work. Mechthild Glaser is a German author. This book I also read in January because that's when it came out, and the second one comes out January 2nd, and I am so beyond excited. But that's irrelevant right now. The Book Jumper follows a young girl and her mother as they travel to Scotland, specifically a very remote island in Scotland, for a vacation. There have been some things that have happened to them in Germany that they want to forget for a little bit, so they go to Scotland, where the main character finds out that she can jump into books. As an avid reader, that just appealed to me on so many levels, because who wouldn't want to jump into any book you like? Number 3 is The Butterfly Islands by Chris Seabranch. This follows a young girl who is being sold off to a sadistic pervert by her father in marriage, and she wants to escape it. So she goes to this island that she's heard about where all these women and girls who also needed to escape went, and it goes from there. It's an amazing story. I love the characters. It's very female dominated and they're well written as well. Number 4 is a series, so I mean it technically is 4 books, but that is The Lunar Chronicles by Marissa Myers. These are a retelling of various fairy tales such as Cinderella, Little Red Riding Hood, Rapunzel, etc. And again, I thoroughly enjoyed this one. I thought it was this series, rather. I thought it was great. The characters were fantastic. Scarlet is definitely my favorite, though. And I loved how they all came together just sort of randomly, almost, but for virtually the same reason. Number 5 is a non-fiction. It's called The Sultan and the Queen by Jerry Broughton. This is about Elizabeth I and Islam and all the rulers that she dealt with and the trade that she tried to initiate between the Islamic empires and Great Britain at the time. I just enjoyed this book because I love Elizabeth I and I didn't know anything about Islam and Elizabeth. It's not a focus point in a lot of history classes. Number 6 is Crown of Embers by Rae Carson. This is the second in one of her series. I don't remember the name of it, but I also really like this book. The first book I didn't enjoy really at all, and so it took me a long time, several years in fact, to get into the rest of the series. But when I read the second one, I loved it. The characters had, I don't know, maybe it was my memory or whatever, but the characters had developed to the point where I actually liked them. There wasn't a huge focus on romance. They were more about duty, and I loved the twist on the world that we have in the book. I thought it was fantastic. Number 7 is another series of 4 books, and that is Luxe and the ensuing 3 books by Anna Godberdson. This is set in the late 1800s, early 1900s, and it follows high society in New York, if I remember correctly. Specifically, 2 or 3 families. 2 of them are very high society, and one of them is the maid for one of the families. Again, this book was just really well done, I thought. It's fun, the historical part of it is relatively accurate, and they don't quite get what they want all the time, which I love in books, because when they get everything that they want, it kind of drives me a little bit bonkers. Number 8 is Equal of the Sun by Anita Amarezvani. Again, last name pronunciation is horrible, I'm sorry. But this one is about an Iranian princess in 1576 as she navigates the pitfalls of her father's death and the ensuing chaos that is the Iranian court as they try to figure out who the new emperor is. I loved this book. It's based on an actual historical figure, Pari, and I just thought it was fascinating because, again, I don't know anything about Iran in 1576. I know very little about Iran in general, but 1576 is a fascinating time for me, so I loved this book. It was just incredibly well written as well. Number 9 is The Great Gatsby by S. Scott Fitzgerald. I read this book on a recommendation from my friend who was in the Peace Corps in Nicaragua, and also because I hadn't read it in high school. Shocking, I know, but I actually really enjoyed it. It's a short read, less than 200 pages, so it took me maybe 2 hours at the absolute most. But the writing style is just beautiful. There are many, many problems in the book. I acknowledge that. There's not great role models for relationships or even great role models in general, but the writing style is just so beautiful, and I think the story was more realistic, and I really enjoyed that aspect of it, and also its portrayal of the Roaring Twenties. Number 10 is Sarah J. Maas's A Court of Thorns and Roses series, specifically the second two, and very specifically the second one, A Court of Mist and Fury. A Court of Mist and Fury to me just felt good. I really enjoyed the writing style. I loved seeing Feyre in her current predicament and how she had grown and how all the characters interacted and the relationships between them. I definitely think it is the best book in the trilogy. Number 11 is another nonfiction. It is Hamilton by Ron Chernow. I read this one because there's a musical by the same name based on the book, and I have it almost memorized, so I figured it was finally time to read the book. I did. The writing is amazing. There's so much information packed into this 800-page book that it's definitely dense to get through, but it doesn't feel like you're reading a textbook. It feels good, and it's pretty quickly moving, and you can hear Hamilton in your head as you're reading it. Number 12, again, is a series. I'm cheating, I'm sorry, and that is the WaterFire Saga by Jennifer Donnelly. This follows 6 mermaids as they fight to save their homeland, which, as mermaids, is under the sea. Each of the 6 come from different parts of the sea, so we've got one who comes from the Indian Ocean, we've got one who comes from the Atlantic, one from the really northern reaches, like the Arctic Circle kind of thing, one who comes more from Louisiana, just all these different areas, which I thought was fantastic. And you follow each of the 6, but then they come together, and it's just a really nice story about girls who don't have to listen to anybody because their parents and society is telling them all that they have to be a certain way, and through the stories they figure out that they don't need to be that way and that they're stronger than they thought they were. Number 13 is The Tiger's Wife by Thea Obrecht. This follows a girl and her grandfather in an imaginary Baltic state through the 20th century, including World War II and beyond. It has an element of magical realism, and it's just fascinating how all of that is weaved in and how you see each of the characters react to different things and just everything like that. I loved this book. It was one of the most surprising books of my year as well. Number 14 is Incan Bone by Rachel Kane, which I actually finished last night. This is the first in her Great Library series. I believe there are 4 books, and obviously I haven't read the rest of them, but the first one is fantastic. It follows several people who are trying to get into a job as employees by the library. And the library was created after the Great Library in Alexandria burned, and they created a codex, which is every book that the library will want you to read. So the library controls the distribution of information and knowledge, because their saying is knowledge is everything, which means that it's worth more than a human life, it's worth more than money, gold, it doesn't matter. And so you follow these different kids, because they are kids, they're 16, 17 years old, as they try to navigate the politics of the library with their scholar who has gotten into a bit of trouble, and they try not to get attached to other people because there are about 30 of them going into this, and only 6 of them will get a place. The writing is just, it's very simple, it's very sort of showing, and I know some people don't like that, but I didn't mind. The pace was great. I loved this book, and I'm so excited to continue the series. And then number 15 is All the Gallant Men by Dawn Stratton. This is an autobiography or a memoir about Pearl Harbor and a little bit beyond that, by one of the 5 surviving members of the Arizona from the attack on Pearl Harbor. I actually got this book signed because he lives in Colorado Springs and I am close enough that I just couldn't resist. So I have a book that is signed by one of the 5 remaining members who survived the attack on Pearl Harbor on the Arizona. This book is also just, again, amazing. It's very simply written. He is in great shape for a 95-year-old, first of all, but second of all, he tells a story. He tells it in sort of a twisted way, and I don't mean twisted like bad, but twisted like he entwines the statistics of Pearl Harbor with his own personal story and with the sailors he knew who died, or with the sailors he knew who survived, because obviously there were some. But it follows him through Pearl Harbor and then through his year of rehab, because he was burned over 65% of his body. And then, in 1944, he re-enlisted in the Navy. He had to do some quick talking to do that. And then he ended up seeing Okinawa as well, which just amazes me. But I highly suggest you read this book. It is one of 3 books that has ever made me cry. Be forewarned. But again, this is just an amazing book. That said, those are all 15 of my best books from 2017. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, give it a big thumbs up down below. If you want to see more content like this, hit that subscribe button down below. As always, I will leave my Goodreads link down below. That's all I got. Let me know in the comments what were your best books in 2017 and if you read any of these and what you thought of them. I will see you soon in another video. Bye.